The letter arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between a cable bill and a perfume catalog. No return address, just my name written in precise, angular handwriting that made my stomach twist before I even opened it. I should have known right then that it would change everything. My name is Lila, and until that moment, I thought I had finally found my place in the Sinclair family. Sure, my mother-in-law Augusta still treated our weekly dinners like military operations, and my husband Grant still couldn't say no to her. But I was making it work. Or at least that's what I told myself. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of cream-colored paper, expensive stuff. The kind Augusta uses for her charity gala invitations. The message was short. Your mother-in-law isn't who you think she is. Check the family business accounts from 2019. Follow the money. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking more with each pass. The paper smelled faintly of Chanel No. 5, Augusta's signature scent. The same one she'd given me a bottle of last Christmas, with that little smile that said, "Now you can smell like a real Sinclair." I called Grant at his office, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, do you have access to the old business accounts? Why would you need those?" He sounded distracted, probably buried in work as usual. Just curious about something. For the family history project Augusta asked me to help with. The lie came easily, surprising me. You know Mom handles all that stuff. Maybe ask her? Of course. Everything went through Augusta. Even after 10 years of marriage, I still needed her permission to breathe the Sinclair air. Right, silly me, I said, already knowing I wouldn't ask her. See you at dinner? About that? Grant hesitated. Mom called. She wants us all over tonight. Says she has something important to discuss. My stomach dropped. Tonight? But it's not our usual night. You know how she gets. Better not to argue. I hung up and stared at the letter again. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Augusta never did anything without calculation, like a chess player always thinking 10 moves ahead. That evening, I pulled into the circular driveway of the Sinclair mansion, the letter burning a hole in my purse. Grant's car was already there, along with his father Gerald's Mercedes and, surprisingly, his brother Everett's Range Rover. Everett hardly ever came to family dinners anymore, not since Augusta had driven his wife Marissa away 2 years ago. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. Augusta stood there in her perfectly tailored navy dress, pearl necklace gleaming. Lila, darling. You're late. Traffic, I said, though I was actually right on time. She just liked to remind me that her time was more valuable than mine. Well, come in. We have matters to discuss. She turned and glided toward the dining room, leaving me to follow in her wake like always. The others were already seated, Grant looking uncomfortable, Gerald studying his water glass, and Everett radiating tension from the far end of the table. The air felt thick with unspoken words. Augusta took her place at the head of the table, smoothing her napkin across her lap. Now that we're all here, I have an announcement. She paused, her eyes finding mine with unsettling precision. There have been some concerning developments with the family business. Someone has been making inquiries about our financial records. My heart stopped. How could she know about the letter already? I hadn't told anyone. I intend to get to the bottom of this, she continued, her voice silk over steel. And I expect everyone's full cooperation in protecting our family's interests. As the others murmured their agreement, I felt the weight of Augusta's gaze. In that moment, I knew 2 things with absolute certainty. Someone was trying to expose Augusta's secrets, and she was ready to destroy anyone who helped them, even family. The game was on, whether I was ready or not. After Augusta's announcement, dinner became an exercise in calculated silence. The only sounds were silver against china and the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. I watched as Gerald methodically cut his steak into precise squares, never once looking up at his wife. The salmon is excellent, I said, trying to break the tension. Is this a new recipe? Augusta dabbed her lips with her napkin. Our new chef. The last one couldn't follow simple instructions. Her eyes flickered to me. Some people never learn their place in an established household. Everett's fork clattered against his plate. Really, Mother? We're doing this again. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, darling. Augusta's voice was honey-sweet, but her knuckles were white around her wine glass. I glanced at Grant, hoping for support, but he was studying his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Typical. 10 years of marriage, and he still couldn't stand up to her. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, I'd love to learn more about the family business. Maybe I could help with some of the administrative work. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Augusta's smile never wavered, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. "Oh, Lila," she said, "you have your little perfume shop to worry about. We wouldn't want to overwhelm you with matters beyond your expertise." Before I could respond, Gerald cleared his throat. "The business is doing fine, Lila. No need to concern yourself." His voice was quiet, but there was something in his tone, a warning. Besides, Augusta continued, "We're here to discuss the charity gala next month. I expect everyone to attend." She looked pointedly at Everett. "Everyone." "Can't," Everett said. "I have plans." "Cancel them." Augusta's tone left no room for argument. "The Sinclair family presents a united front. Isn't that right, Grant?" Grant finally looked up. "Of course, Mother." I felt sick. The letter in my purse seemed to burn against my leg. As Augusta launched into details about table arrangements and guest lists, I excused myself to use the bathroom. In the hallway, Everett caught up with me. "Hey, you okay?" "Fine," I lied. "Just needed some air." He glanced back toward the dining room. "Listen, be careful asking about the business." "Mom's protective." "Why? What's she hiding?" "Let's just say Marissa asked similar questions before." He trailed off, jaw tightening. "Just watch yourself." Back at the table, Augusta was showing Gerald something on her phone. The caterer sent the most wonderful proposals, though I noticed Marissa's new company submitted a bid. She deleted something with a decisive tap. Shame about their reputation for unreliability. I saw Everett's hands clench under the table. So that's how Augusta operated. Death by 1,000 cuts, each one precisely aimed. "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "I've heard great things about Marissa's work. Maybe we should consider." "I've made my decision." Augusta's tone was final. "Now, about the seating arrangements." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of passive-aggressive comments and loaded silences. As we prepared to leave, Augusta pulled me aside. "Lila, dear, a word?" She led me into her study, closing the door. "I hope you understand that family loyalty is everything to us Sinclairs." "Of course." "Good." She adjusted a photo on her desk, the whole family at Christmas, everyone smiling like they meant it. It would be tragic if anything threatened that harmony. Especially now, with you and Grant trying for a baby. My blood ran cold. We hadn't told anyone about that yet. "How did you?" "I make it my business to know everything that affects this family." She patted my cheek. "Sleep well, dear." I left the study feeling like I'd just been threatened in a language I was only beginning to understand. But as I drove home, the letter burning a hole in my purse, I made a decision. If Augusta wanted to play games, fine. But I wasn't going to be another pawn on her board. I needed to talk to Marissa. Finding Marissa wasn't hard. What was hard was explaining to Grant why I needed to leave work early to meet a friend for coffee. He didn't ask who. He never did, but his silence spoke volumes. The cafe was tucked away in a part of town the Sinclairs would never visit. Marissa sat at a corner table, looking nothing like the polished society wife I remembered from old family photos. Her hair was shorter, her clothes more relaxed. She looked happier. "I almost didn't come," she said as I sat down. "But Everett said it was important. Thank you for meeting me." I pulled out the letter, now creased from constant handling. "I need to understand what happened to you." Marissa read it, her face growing tight. "Where did you get this?" "It just showed up. But after last night's dinner, I think." "Let me guess," she interrupted. "Augusta's starting to show her teeth?" I nodded, remembering the study conversation. "She knows things she shouldn't. About me and Grant trying for a baby." "Of course she does." Marissa's laugh was bitter. "She probably has the house bugged. Wouldn't put it past her." A server brought our coffees. I waited until he left before asking, "What really happened between you and Everett?" "I found something in the company books." "Discrepancies." She stirred her coffee endlessly. Large amounts of money moving through shell companies. When I asked questions, she shrugged. Suddenly there were rumors about me. Affairs, gambling debts. Augusta's specialty, death by reputation. My hand shook as I reached for my cup. And Everett? Augusta gave him a choice. Stand by his troubled wife or protect the family name. Her voice cracked slightly. He chose wrong. Took him 2 years to realize it. I need proof, I said. Something concrete. Marissa pulled out her phone, typed something. Check your email. It's everything I managed to save before they locked me out. But Lila, her eyes met mine. Be careful. Augusta doesn't just destroy careers. She destroys families. Back at home, I waited until Grant left for his evening run before logging into his laptop. His password was still our wedding date, something Augusta would hate. The files Marissa sent were complex, but a pattern emerged. Money disappearing from company accounts, reappearing in offshore holdings. All authorized by Augusta. I was so absorbed I didn't hear the front door. What are you doing? I jumped. Grant stood in the doorway, still in his running clothes, face unreadable. I can explain. Are those company files? He moved closer, saw Marissa's email. You met with Marissa? Behind my back? Someone had to ask questions, I said, standing. Your mother is stealing from the company, Grant. These documents prove it. Those documents are confidential. His voice was cold, distant. And Marissa is bitter about her divorce. You can't trust her. Can we trust your mother? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's it hurt. You don't understand. Family is everything to her. Family? I laughed. She's destroying this family. Ask Everett. Ask your father why he can barely look at her anymore. Stop. His hands clenched. Just stop. Delete those files. Forget about this. Or what? She'll destroy me like she destroyed Marissa? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Grant spoke. I need some air. He grabbed his keys and left without looking back. I sat there, staring at the screen, until my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check the 3rd floor storage room at the office. Gee. Gerald. The quiet one. The watcher. I looked at the front door Grant had slammed, then back at the phone. I had a choice to make. Stay safe in my marriage's comfortable lies, or dig deeper and risk everything. I grabbed my car keys. Sometimes the only way forward is through the fire. The office building would be empty this late. And I still had the key card Grant had given me last Christmas, another thing Augusta didn't know about. At least, I hoped she didn't. The 3rd floor storage room smelled like old paper and secrets. My hands trembled as I used Grant's keycard, half expecting alarms to blare. Instead, only silence greeted me as I slipped inside. Filing cabinets lined the walls, their labels faded with age. I pulled out my phone to use as a flashlight, and that's when I saw it, a manila envelope sitting on top of the nearest cabinet, as if someone had left it there just for me. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Augusta at various meetings, shaking hands with men I didn't recognize. Dates stamped in the corners. 2019, just like the letter had mentioned. But it was the last photo that made my blood run cold. Augusta standing in what looked like a hotel lobby with Gerald's brother, Thomas. The same Thomas who had supposedly died in a boating accident that year. My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from Grant. Where are you? I didn't reply. Instead, I took pictures of everything with shaking hands. As I reached to put the envelope back, I knocked something off the cabinet. A small recorder hit the floor, its back popping open. The voice that played was Gerald's. Can't keep covering for you, Augusta. Thomas knows about the money. He's threatening to go to the board. Augusta's reply was ice cold. Handle it. Whatever it takes. I didn't spend 30 years building this family to have your idiot brother destroy everything. The recording ended. My mind raced. Thomas hadn't died in an accident. He'd been silenced. And Gerald. Gerald knew. The lights suddenly flickered on. I spun around to find Grant in the doorway, his face a mask of confusion and betrayal. I followed you, he said quietly. What are you doing here? Listen to this. I held out the recorder. Your mother. Stop. He held up a hand. Just stop. Do you have any idea what you're doing? What this could do to our family? Family? I laughed, the sound sharp and foreign. Your Uncle Thomas was family. Did you know about him too? Grant's face went pale. What are you talking about? I showed him the photo. His hands shook as he took it. This is impossible, he whispered. He died. We had a funeral. Your mother lied. She's been lying about everything. I touched his arm. Grant, please. Help me understand what's happening. He stared at the photo for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were different, harder, older somehow. We need to go, he said. Now. But the evidence. Leave it. Please, Lila. Trust me. We drove home in silence, the weight of unspoken words filling the car. As we pulled into our driveway, Grant finally spoke. Mom called while I was looking for you. She's coming over tomorrow morning. Says she wants to discuss our future in the family business. My stomach dropped. She knows. Probably. He turned off the engine but didn't move. Whatever you found tonight. We can't use it. The cost would be too high. Higher than letting her get away with what she did to Thomas? Grant's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. You don't understand what she's capable of. Then help me understand, I pleaded. Because right now, I'm watching my husband choose his mother's lies over the truth, and I don't know how to live with that. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. The distance between us felt infinite. I need time to think, he said finally. I got out of the car, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. Time won't change what's true, Grant. And tomorrow morning. Your mother is going to walk through our door expecting me to choose between my marriage and my conscience. I looked back at him. Still sitting in the dark car. I just hope I'm not the only one who has to make that choice. I went inside alone, leaving him with his silence and his mother's secrets. Tomorrow would bring either truth or destruction. Maybe both. But tonight, I had evidence of murder in my phone and a husband who couldn't decide if he was my ally or my enemy. Sleep wasn't going to come easily. Augusta arrived at 8 sharp the next morning, perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. Grant had spent the night in the guest room, and the silence between us hung like smoke in the air. Darling, Augusta breezed past me, not waiting for an invitation. Gerald sends his regrets. He's feeling under the weather. Her eyes flickered around our living room, lingering on the family photos. Where's Grant? On cue, he emerged from upstairs, looking like he hadn't slept. Mother. Wonderful. Shall we discuss your future? She settled onto our couch like it was her throne. The doorbell rang again. Augusta's smile tightened as Everett walked in. Sorry I'm late, he said, though I hadn't known he was coming. Traffic. Augusta's fingers drummed against her purse. I wasn't aware this was a family meeting. Oh! Everett sat beside me. Funny, since we're discussing family business. Before Augusta could respond, another figure appeared in our doorway. Marissa. My heart stopped. What is she doing here? Augusta's voice could have frozen hell. I invited her, Everett said. Since we're talking about the future of the company, I thought we should include everyone who knows its secrets, including Uncle Thomas's. The temperature in the room plummeted. Grant stepped forward. Everett, don't. Don't what? Marissa interrupted. Don't mention how your mother orchestrated Thomas's disappearance? Or how she's been embezzling money through shell companies for years. Augusta laughed, but something cracked in her perfect facade. These accusations are ridiculous. Grant, surely you don't believe. Show them, I said quietly, pulling out my phone. Show them the photos, Grant. Tell them what we found. Grant stood frozen between his mother and me, the weight of 30 years of loyalty crushing him. Grant, Augusta's voice turned soft, dangerous. Remember who you are. What this family means. What this family means? Everett stood. This family means lies, manipulation, and murder. Dad knows it too. Why do you think he's really not here today? Augusta's hand flew to her throat. Gerald would never. He left the evidence, I said. In the storage room. He wanted us to find it. You ungrateful little. Augusta started toward me, but Marissa stepped between us. "I've already sent copies to the board," Marissa said. "And the police. It's over, Augusta." The silence that followed was deafening. Augusta's perfect mask crumbled, revealing something desperate and dangerous underneath. "Grant," she whispered. "Tell them they're wrong. Tell them what a good mother I've been." Grant looked at me, then at his mother. 10 years of marriage against a lifetime of manipulation. "I saw the photos," he said finally. "I heard the recording. Uncle Thomas. Everything I did was for this family." Augusta's voice rose. "Thomas would have destroyed us. Just like she's destroying us now." She pointed at me, hands shaking. "I won't let you tear apart what I've built." She reached into her purse. The metal of the small revolver caught the morning light. "Mother." Grant moved toward her, but she stepped back. "Nobody moves," she said. Her hand was steady now, the gun aimed at my chest. "Lila, darling, you're going to delete those photos. Then you're going to tell the board it was all a mistake. A misunderstanding." "Augusta." Everett's voice was careful, measured. "Think about what you're doing." "I have thought about it. For 30 years, I've thought about nothing but protecting this family." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "And I won't stop now." I met her eyes, saw the fear behind the fury. "You're right," I said softly. "Family is everything. That's why Gerald left the evidence. Because sometimes protecting your family means saving them from themselves." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Augusta's hand trembled. "Mother," Grant said, "please." The gun wavered. In that moment, I saw our futures balancing on a knife's edge, justice or tragedy, truth or lies, family or destruction. The choice wasn't mine anymore. It was Augusta's. And she was finally out of moves. The police arrived just as Augusta pulled the trigger. The gun clicked empty. Gerald had thought of everything, even removing the bullets. As they led her away in handcuffs, she didn't scream or fight. She just smiled at me, that same perfect society smile she'd worn at every family dinner. "You'll never be one of us," she said softly as they escorted her past. "Remember that." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of police statements and reporters camping outside our house. Grant hadn't said more than 2 words to me since they took his mother away. He just sat in his study, staring at old family photos like they might reveal some hidden truth. I found him there late that night, an empty whiskey glass in his hand. "The board called," he said without looking up. "They're suspending everyone involved pending investigation. Including me." "Grant, don't." His voice was flat. "Just don't." A knock at the front door saved me from responding. Gerald stood on our porch, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "May I come in?" Grant didn't move from his study, so I led Gerald to the kitchen. He pulled out a thick envelope. "Thomas is alive," he said without preamble. "In witness protection. These are his sworn statements about what really happened." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. "Why now? Why didn't you stop her years ago?" "Fear." Gerald's voice cracked. "Not of Augusta, of losing everything. The family, the business, my son's respect." By the time I realized the cost of my silence, it seemed too late. "It's never too late for the truth," I said, but the words felt hollow. "Isn't it?" Grant appeared in the doorway. "The truth just destroyed our family, Lila. Are you happy now?" "Grant," Gerald started, but Grant cut him off. "Save it. You're as guilty as she is. You watched her destroy people for years and did nothing." He turned to me. "And you. You couldn't leave well enough alone. Had to play detective, had to be the hero. Your mother tried to kill me. Because you backed her into a corner." The whiskey glass shattered against the wall. "Everything she did for us. And now what do we have? A mother in jail, a family in shambles, and a wife who chose revenge over loyalty." "It wasn't revenge," I whispered. "It was justice." "Justice?" He laughed bitterly. "Tell that to the hundreds of employees who will lose their jobs when this scandal breaks. Tell that to the charities we support. Tell that to our unborn children who will carry this shame." The mention of children hit me like a physical blow. We'd been trying for months, dreaming of a family. Now those dreams felt like ashes in my mouth. "I'm going to stay with Everett," Grant said, already moving toward the door. I need time. Grant, please. I reached for him, but he pulled away. You won, you war, Lila. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it. The door closed behind him with devastating finality. Gerald touched my shoulder gently. He'll come around, he said. The truth has a way of settling in, given time. But as I stood in my empty kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage and the weight of Augusta's final smile, I wasn't so sure. I'd started this journey seeking justice, thinking the truth would set us all free. Instead, it had shattered everything I loved. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You should have listened to Augusta. This isn't over. The Sinclairs protect their own. I showed it to Gerald, watching his face pale. Augusta has friends in high places, he said quietly. Powerful friends who owe her favors. Maybe we were wrong to think this would end with her arrest. The truth hit me then. I hadn't won anything. I just started a war I wasn't sure I could finish. And now I had to face it alone. Outside, another car pulled up to our house. Through the window, I could see men in expensive suits stepping out, carrying briefcases that probably contained more threats than legal papers. The real battle was just beginning. The visiting room at the county jail smelled like despair and cheap coffee. Augusta sat across from me, still elegant in her orange jumpsuit, her perfect posture unchanged by 3 days of incarceration. I wondered when you'd come, she said, folding her hands on the metal table. Have you enjoyed watching my family fall apart? Your family? I leaned forward. You mean the one you've been manipulating for decades? The one you tried to kill me to protect? She smiled that razor-sharp smile. And yet here you are, alone. Where's Grant? Still hiding at Everett's. The jab hit its mark, but I kept my face neutral. I'm here because your powerful friends are threatening the people I love. It stops now. Does it? Augusta's eyes glittered. You know, I've had time to think in here. About choices, consequences. About what makes a family strong. She pulled out a folded paper from her pocket. Sign this. I read it quickly, a statement recanting everything, claiming I'd fabricated the evidence out of jealousy and spite. Never. Then the board will receive proof tomorrow that Grant was involved in the embezzlement. His signature is on quite a few documents. Her voice softened. He'll go to prison, Lila. Is your truth worth that? My hands shook. You'd destroy your own son? I'd do anything to protect this family, even from itself. She pushed the paper closer. Sign it. Save your marriage. Give your future children a father instead of a cautionary tale. The door opened behind me. Grant walked in. Augusta's mask slipped for just a moment. Darling. I heard everything, Mother. His voice was ice. The guards let me listen in. They're recording this conversation. She recovered quickly. Then you understand what's at stake. What she's doing to us. What you're doing to us, he corrected. I found Uncle Thomas. The color drained from Augusta's face. He told me everything, Grant continued. About how you threatened his family when he discovered the embezzlement. How you forced him into hiding. How you've been blackmailing Dad for years. I did it for you. Augusta's composure cracked. Everything I built, every person I removed, it was all to give you boys the perfect family I never had. Perfect? Grant laughed bitterly. You drove Everett away, terrorized Marissa, nearly destroyed my marriage. That's not family, Mother. That's control. You ungrateful. She lunged across the table, but guards were already moving in. One more thing, I said as they restrained her. Those powerful friends you mentioned? They just got subpoenas from the FBI. Turns out Gerald kept very detailed records. Augusta's face contorted. Gerald? My Gerald. He loved you enough to stop you, Grant said quietly. That's what real family does. As they led Augusta away, she turned back one last time. You'll regret this. Both of you. You have no idea what it takes to keep a family together. No, Mother, Grant called after her. We know exactly what it takes. The truth. In the parking lot, Grant and I stood in awkward silence. I'm sorry, he finally said, for not believing you. For choosing her lies over your truth. I'm sorry too. For not understanding what this would cost you. He took my hand, tentative. What happens now? Now. I squeezed his hand. We build something real. Something honest. My phone buzzed. A text from Everett. Board meeting tomorrow. They're voting to restructure. Clean slate. A clean slate, Grant echoed, reading over my shoulder. Think we can handle that? I thought about Augusta's perfect facade, about the cost of lies and the weight of truth. About family. Not the kind you're born into, but the kind you choose to build. Together, I said. We'll build it together. Behind us, Augusta's empire was crumbling. But from its ashes, something stronger could grow. Something true. The war was over. Now came the hard part, peace. 6 months later, I stood in Augusta's study, boxing up the last remnants of her carefully curated life. The trial had ended quickly. Too many paper trails, too many witnesses. Now the mansion was being sold, its proceeds going to repay the people she'd hurt. Found something interesting, Gerald said from the doorway, holding a leather-bound book. Augusta's diary. Started the day we got married. I took it carefully, the pages crackling with age. The first entry read, "Today I became a Sinclair. I will never be powerless again." She was 19 when her family lost everything, Gerald said quietly. Spent a year in poverty before meeting me. I thought I was rescuing her. Turns out she was building a fortress. And you sent me that first letter, I said. It wasn't a question anymore. He nodded, watching her destroy Marissa and Everett's marriage. I couldn't let it happen again. But I was too much of a coward to act directly. You're here now, I said, touching his arm. That counts for something. Footsteps echoed through the empty house. Grant appeared with another box, Everett behind him. Mom's lawyer called, Grant said. She wants to see us. All of us. The prison visiting room felt smaller this time. Augusta had lost weight, her perfect posture slightly stooped. But her eyes were clearer than I'd ever seen them. I've been in therapy, she said without preamble. Apparently, I have control issues. A ghost of her old smile flickered. Who knew? Nobody laughed. I won't ask for forgiveness, she continued. But I want you to understand. Everything I did, the manipulation, the lies, it started with love. Twisted, broken love, but love nonetheless. Love doesn't excuse what you did to Thomas, Everett said. To Marissa. To all of us. No, it doesn't. Augusta's hands trembled slightly. But it's why I'm signing over everything. The remaining assets, the family trusts, they're yours now. All of you. She looked at me. Even you, Lila. You were right about one thing. Family is what we choose to build. Grant tensed beside me. Why now? Because control is a prison, she said simply. And I've had enough of prisons. Later that night, in our new home across town, I found Grant in the nursery we'd started planning. The walls were half-painted, hope mixed with uncertainty. She'll never meet her grandchild, he said, hand resting on my slightly swollen belly. Not directly, anyway. No, I agreed. But maybe that's better. We get to build something new. My phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. Everett proposed. Again. Said second chances come from telling the truth. You started something, Lila. I showed Grant the message. He smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. Truth as a foundation, he mused. Novel concept for a Sinclair. Former concept, I corrected. We're building our own legacy now. A week later, a package arrived. Inside was Augusta's perfume bottle, Chanel No. 5, and a note. For your daughter. Tell her the truth about me, all of it. Some legacies are warnings, not inspirations. I placed the bottle on a high shelf, visible but out of reach. Like Augusta herself now, a reminder, not a threat. The scent lingered faintly in the air, mixing with the fresh paint and new beginnings. That night, I dreamed of family dinners without hidden agendas, of children growing up without the weight of perfect facades, of truth as a gift rather than a weapon. But in the dream, Augusta's smile still haunted the edges, reminding me that the line between protection and control, between love and possession, was thinner than I'd once believed. Maybe that was the real legacy she'd left us, not the fortune or the family name, but the understanding that every family carries its shadows. The choice isn't whether to acknowledge them, but what to build in spite of them. In the end, that's what revenge gave way to, not destruction, but reconstruction. A chance to build something true from the ashes of necessary endings. The war was over. The healing had begun. And somewhere between justice and mercy, we'd found our way home.